Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. It is just struck 7:15, so that means that I am fresh off dinner. But I decided today that I wanted to discuss, basically, create a second part of the Dracula Coffee Hour. Today, what I'm drinking is I got a six bean blend. I've been on that kick for the past couple of days, um, or actually past couple of weeks, because I've advertised it on my podcast a couple of times. You can buy the blend right here, coffeebyseth.com. Link is in the description below. But today I really want to discuss Dracula and the characters, the statistical analysis, not statistical analysis, but the character analysis of the main characters. And there's, I think, 7 or so of them. I got a couple of pages here that I am going to use to just keep myself on track. But before that, I think I may need to take a sip because I got a bit of cotton mouth today. So, the primary character in this, one that we don't really hear from all that often, but we hear from him in the beginning, is Count Dracula himself. Dracula is a vampire who lives in Romania, and he was once a leader of the Romanian army or the Turkish army. And what about Dracula makes him special? And yes, I'm not pronouncing it funny. That is actually how you pronounce it if you do any sort of language research on the book itself. Personally, if we're gonna, actually before we get into that, if we're going to talk about language in the book and how the book's written and stuff like that, to keep true to the book itself, I honestly really think that the book, when written in shorthand from Miss Harker, Mina Harker, or Mina Maria at the beginning is how we know her. Mina Harker, I think that it would be really interesting if it was written in shorthand, or if there was at least a version that came in shorthand. Now, I do not know how to read shorthand, but I feel like it would be a valuable tool set. I guess that's a similar mindset to what Mina was discussing, but we're going to get into Mina very shortly because there are quite a few characters that we really need to dive into, and we're going to start that off with Dracula. So what role is Dracula? What is his role in the book, and what does he do? Well, Dracula is, as you can probably guess, the antagonist of the book. He lives in Transylvania, and he was a vampire who is after to create a curse on England. Now, prior to launching his curse on England with his vampiric ways, he decides to do several hundred years of research. As when Jonathan Harker enters the Dracula's castle, he is eventually greeted by different newspaper clippings, older books, showing that they've been there a while, and they look like they've all been read through and they've gone through. Now, Count Dracula was doing his research on the English culture himself. Oh, also, I'm going to break this down real quick. I am not, by any stretch of the imagination, an English professor. I am not, by any stretch of the imagination, an English whiz. I am not, by any stretch of the imagination, any type of literature specialist. No one. I was a CD student. I graduated high school CDs, and I'm currently in college. I'm going a little bit later in my life, but it is what it is. So this is coming from the layman's point of view. And I've read this book twice, and I've read it actually probably about 2.5 times because I'm about halfway or maybe 30% way done with the third reading. Just because it's an interesting read. I like it. I like the way it's written. But Dracula is an invader to English customs, his lifestyle, and it can be considered a symbol. And his connection to, I guess, the English people, or to Mina and to Lucy, is disease, is a blood connection, something that they can really feel. Actually, it looks like we've got some comments in here. What do we got? What do we got going on here, guys? What do we got for comments? All right, cool. Sweet. Just showing some support, showing some love. I appreciate all of you. Thank you very, very much. He is seen as a mysterious person, but largely charismatic. he shows some types of behavior that can be manipulative. Manipulated. He can be manipulating his I guess his prey, if you want to call them that, because, well, while Jonathan Harker, Lucy, and Mina are all human, Dracula is not human. He takes the form of human, but he's actually a creature. And to us, a mythic creature, but to the reader and to someone living in this, I guess, this universe, he is considered a form of godlike being that they now have to deal with, possibly for eternity. But I think Quincy and Jonathan and Van Helsing might have something to say about that. So he's also seen as some type of, I guess, as like a sexual object or some form of a sexual representation with the way that he transmits his disease onto his people, or the people, or his prey, if you will. With Mina, grabbing Mina, forcing her through strength alone, he slices himself open, his chest cavity open, and forces her to basically drink the blood from his heart. He forces her to do this, and then in comes Jonathan Harker, Mina Harker's husband, and now Jonathan Harker has to see this, and it creates a whole lot of tension. And there is some dialogue exchanged, and Mina at that point gets terrified, and she's freaking out. But Dracula is seen as a form of mystery and is definitely the antagonist for the book itself. I do want to move into Jonathan Harker and what his role is and what he mainly is responsible for with the book and who he is just as a guy. Now, we first are introduced to Jonathan Harker through his journals in the beginning of the Dracula story. And possibly, it depends on what you subscribe to, it possibly could be the author or the narrator of Dracula's Guest. Dracula's Guest is someone's journey to Dracula's castle, and it leaves off pretty much where Jonathan Harker picks up. And it's I think it's Jonathan Harker, and I think it's a form of Dracula that got cut, because when the book was in the process of being published and it was under review, the publishers decided this is too long, cut a bunch of stuff. It's way too long of a book. It's not going to do well, and it's too much. You can't. It's too much. So Dracula's Guest was something that I believe got cut or was cut from the book. I think it's fact. I don't think it wasn't. I think it is fact that Dracula's Guest did get cut from the book. And it is a form of Jonathan Harker's story leading up to the castle. So who is Jonathan Harker? Jonathan Harker is a solicitor to Dracula. He's trying to go to Dracula's lair and discuss with him. He's sent by his boss about a purchase of a property called Carfax. And when he gets there, he's greeted by Dracula, and he's invited to stay. And I think Jonathan was under the impression that he was going to be staying a day or two to figure out the paperwork. He had brought a suitcase, a couple changes of clothes, maybe to rest and to relax for a few, and then go back to England. He's soon held hostage, not hostage, maybe just held prisoner in the castle, a wandering prisoner. He just can't escape. He can't get out. But he starts to see things that he thinks his eyes are tricking him, and it starts to make him go mad. Now, what type of traits does Jonathan have? His traits are polite. He's well-mannered. He's well-spoken. And he's rational. And he has some masculinity issues, because while he's in the presence of Dracula and while he's being kept there, he starts to unravel, basically. He starts to freak out. He starts to get nervous because he has 3 vampire women that want him and that are after him. but they're basically stopped by Dracula and stopped by the cross around his neck. That fortunately some lady in a village on his travels to the Castle Dracula, he was given the cross. So his masculinity starts to unravel because he's helpless. He's absolutely helpless in this situation, and there's nothing this guy can do. I'll be drinking 2 coffees tonight. So you guys got as long as 2 coffees with me. So whenever I'm done with my coffee, that's when I'm going to log off. But so Jonathan Harker was always a believer in the sciences, and he was always a believer in reality. And he goes from believer in reality to a skeptic very quickly, very quickly. And that starts, I believe that really starts under, he gets introduced to the idea in the village when everyone's like, oh my God, don't go there. It either means vampire or werewolf. I forget the actual term that the village folk use. But they say a particular term that in English translate to vampire or werewolf. And he starts to get the idea of, okay, maybe there is something in this world that we don't understand. Maybe there is something freaky here that I should actually probably pay attention to. And I think that later gets confirmed with the blue flames coming up from the ground and the thinking about it in relative terms, but the carriage driver, I don't know what you'd call it, the horseman, I guess the horseman stops to pick up all these blue flames, and the blue flames, if you haven't read the book, are tokens, are currency, treasure that gets illuminated at a particular day when all the spirits are out, all the bad spirits are allowed to essentially be out. That was a very confusing part of the book for me. That's something that I had to reread. And it was something that even after a reread, I didn't quite understand. And I had to do a little bit of research on that. So I'm still kind of loose on that, but that is the gist of it. That's the general idea. Yeah. And I mean, we already kind of discussed the masculinity issues with Jonathan, because he's seen as a Gothic man, and that's how he presents himself in his journal, and he sees everything through the Gothic perspective because that is the era in which this book is written. And in this era, men are meant to lead, men are meant to be in control, men are meant to take charge, and all these internal values start to get stripped from him very, very quickly. What do we got for comments? We got any comments in here? Everyone can say hi if you want. Say hi. I'll read them out loud. I'll talk to you guys. I don't mind taking a break. But, alrighty. We move on. We're going to move on to his wife, Mina, because Mina is one of the most important parts of the story. Mina is the right-hand girl for Jonathan. She's the right-hand girl for Van Helsing. And without Mina, this problem may have never been solved, and Dracula may have gotten back to his castle and laid to rest for 100 years, 200 years, because he can wait centuries and then go re-attack. And the reason he can wait centuries is because he can feed off the life of others through, you guessed it, blood. So, Mina Harker, or Mina Murray, she's seen as sort of like a compass. What direction should we move in? And not only is that symbolism, but that's fact. Because throughout the story, we learn that Mina collects the information on the train schedules, and she starts to memorize things. So when someone needs to get to Jonathan, or when someone needs to get to the castle, or when someone needs to get to a particular location and they're under a time crunch, they don't have time. They can't just whip their phones out. They can't just whip this bad boy out. They can't do that. No, they have to go and figure out what the train schedule is. But because Mina is such a supportive part of the story, and she's so supportive to Harker, and she looks up to Harker, and she wants to please Harker, She starts to memorize the train schedules to be of use to Harker. She starts to learn shorthand and how to journal properly to be of use to Harker so that she can help record events and that she can help make her life easier. And in that process, we're first introduced to Mina when she's drafting all this information in a letter or a journal or a diary. I think it's more a letter to Lucy Westenra, who we'll talk about next. But she's discussing what she is doing on a day-to-day basis to benefit Harker. And she's educated, clearly. She's loyal, and she's intelligent. And that you could make the argument that Van Helsing is the backbone of the group, this motley crew of would-be vampire killers. But at this point, they're just some motley crew. And you could make the point that Van Helsing's the backbone, but honestly, the way the records are kept and the way the records read inside this book, I think it's Mina. And if you haven't read the book, I say records because they're quite literally records. The book is not laid out as a narrator and then chapter 1, and then you get a little story, and they're telling you the story, they're walking you through it. It's not like that. That's not what the book is. The book is a collection of journal entries, letters, shipping manifests, and logs that you have to make sense of. So if you're listening to an audiobook, it can get tricky if the person's not reading it correctly. But the book is not a narrator. Then there's multiple narrators, and for a first-time read, and if you're new to reading, it can get very confusing if you're not following summaries of each chapter and understanding what's going on, because the language is a little different because it was written over 100 years ago. So what is it, 128 years ago, something like that? Yeah, it's definitely over 100 because I was looking at buying a 109-year-old Dracula book copy. One of the first, not the first, but a very early on edition that was brought to the United States. I was actually looking at that today, and I was discussing that with the current owner of the novel online, obviously, and we were just going over price, but we had a disagreement on price. So back to Mina, because she's a big part of this. She's much like how Jonathan Harker, is a Victorian man and possesses Victorian manly characteristics and tendencies. Mina is the opposite. She possesses Victorian womanhood characteristics and tendencies. And that's extremely important because throughout her time in this battle or this war that this group is in, Mina is making sure that she's learning how to operate the phonograph. She's making sure that she can operate the typewriter, and she's making sure that she can log all this stuff correctly. And one of the biggest failures that this group has is a lack of communication with Mina, and that is the issue. And I forget what exactly happened because I haven't read the book. I'm in the middle of The Count of Monte Cristo right now. And if you don't know, The Count of Monte Cristo is a 1,400-page novel, and there's over 100 chapters. It's very, very hefty book. I'm on chapter 40 right now. So I forget exactly where the lack of communication with Mina occurred. Yeah, I'm not even going to try to guess because I don't want to provide false information. But Mina also stands for the freedom of sexuality, freedom of sex with Victorian women that they're starting to experiment with in our real life society. At that point, it's kind of like okay. This is how I'm going to explain it. It's kind of like in the Great Depression, in that era of American history, where you had the flapper girls, and they were smoking cigarettes and getting a little bit promiscuous and having fun and hanging out, drinking in public and dressing different and stuff like that. That is how Mina's looked at. She's looked at because they're trying to preserve Victorian womanhood traits, but Mina is developing faster than those traits can be preserved. And through that, it's kind of like a weird dance type of thing. I guess that's the only way I can really describe it. You know, little uneducated here, but we're gonna do best with what we've got. Mina, when she's attacked by Dracula, she's kind of pulled in, and when he does the cut down his torso for her to get infected with the blood, it's seen as like a what's the type of word that I'm looking for here? Like a sexual transformation, within the vampiric transformation. I guess that's how it is. It's like that line that's gonna push her over the edge, and that's what fuels this group to stop. Not that Lucy they didn't stop for Lucy, and we can move on to Lucy in a minute, but that's like one of the things now Jonathan's like, oh my God, we have to stop this because we saw what happened with Lucy. This is some serious stuff right now. I also have in my notes that, she's crucial to victory. We kind of already went over that, but she is very, very crucial to victory. All right, Lucy. Who is Lucy? Well, I already told you, it's Mina's best friend. And they write back and forth, and throughout the book, we get different letters, statements, and documents between the two of them, between, Mina and Van Helsing about Lucy. We get their communication, so we see it from like a friendship point of view with Lucy Westenra, which I like. There was a translation somewhere. I saw it somewhere in preparation for this. It was like light with the West or something. Somehow the words, scratch that, forget it. Who is Lucy? Well, if you're gonna try to picture the innocent, virgin girl, who is it? It's Lucy Westenra. And Lucy is often depicted in a white dress, where Mina's often depicted in a darker color dress. I'm not sure if it's black, but it's just a darker color to show that she's not as innocent as Lucy is. But Lucy comes across as flirtatious, and she knows what she's doing. All girls know what they're doing, but Lucy knows what she's doing, and she's trying to find a suitor. In the process of trying to find a suitor, she finds 3 suitors. She finds Quincy Morris. She finds Arthur Holmwood. And she finds... Who's the last one? Who is it? I'm blanking. Why am I blanking on this? Quincy Morris, Arthur Holmwood, and Dr. I forget. It'll come back. Oh, Dr. Stewart. They're all going after Lucy, but they all end up fighting for Lucy at the end, which is really cool because they're all competing. But they're gentlemen, especially Quincy, my boy. Love Quincy. So what's the symbolism? And the symbolism is that this is where the story starts to get dark, because Lucy is, I guess, she hits her demise, and now we get this vampire Lucy, and on her white dress, when she's essentially succumbs to the infection that Dracula gives her, now we have blood-stained dress, and we have black eyes, and her hair turned dark, and now she's looking like a real freaky chick. My kind of girl. So it's seen with Lucy, it's seen as we just lost the innocence of the world. And I guess you could relay symbolism with this. Like, okay, Lucy represents all of England, and this is what's going to happen if we don't stop this right now, right? And the crew Helsing and his boys, they got some advantages. We'll kind of go over that when I talked about Helsing, because Helsing's coming up. But they do have some advantages. But Dracula also has some advantages as well. One of the points where it starts to get really dark with Lucy is when she's seen feeding on a child. So I think it's Dr. Stewart and Helsing are walking through the cemetery of which her tomb is, and Helsing has a theory that she's not actually dead, because we know she's not dead, but we have a theory that she's not actually dead and that she's traveling, right? And they're on their way to the grave, or they had just gotten out of the grave. No, they were on their way to the grave, and they see Lucy standing there staring at them, and she's holding a child. She's like feeding on this kid's neck, like ripping his neck apart here. And now that kid's passed out. He's not screaming. He's just done. All right. And that's when Helsing and Stewart pull out their crucifix, and they're like, "Get out of here!" And she runs around and does this little like half moon type of ordeal, this movement type of thing she does. And then she runs into she goes between, let me mute that. She goes between the cracks in the, I guess the foundation, or maybe the door of her tomb. And she goes into her tomb, and she lays to rest for the night, because she's now just fed. A couple days go by, and the boys are talking, and they're like, "Let me just show you," because they're trying to talk to Arthur, because Arthur is Lucy's husband, and Lucy's Arthur's late wife, and they're kind of like, "Let me just show you that, she's not decomposing. Let me, in a twisted way, let me bring you to her grave, and we can raise her up and show you." Not raise her up literally, but raise her up in the way of, I'm on. But raise her up in the way of, show them that she's not dead. And what they end up finding out is that her face is a brighter color. Her eyes don't typically look the way that they would look if a body was decomposing. But in that, obviously Arthur starts to have some issues with this. And, well, if you read the story, they end up having a little battle with her, and they end up cutting her head off, sticking garlic down her mouth, and putting a stake through her heart. And it's a tragic end and a horrific end to what the purest person in the book is, or happens to the purest person. Because the Stoker wants you to look at Lucy like it's your daughter. That's the way I think that Stoker wants you to look at Lucy. Like, this girl's innocent and this girl's pure. Let's not ruin her. But it ends up getting real dark with Lucy. Now let's talk about Stewart, Dr. Stewart. Yeah, and he's one of the suitors. But what does he do for work, and why is his work relevant to what's going on with us? Are we still live? Yeah, we're still live. All right, word, cool. And why is his work relevant with what happens in the book itself? It's because he runs an asylum where someone by the name of Remfield, a mad, I guess, patient, someone who's psychotic and under the control of Dracula, is residing. And he is Dr. Who are we on? Oh, yeah. Dr. Stewart is a direct student of Van Helsing. And, hello. And, where was I? We got some background interference going on here. We're good. Yeah, so Stewart was a student of Van Helsing in the psychology field. And it's important because where is Helsing? Where is Helsing? Where are my notes? I wrote the word down. Maybe I didn't. It's all good. But Helsing really focuses in on the psychology of the group, and he's able to use all these different points of his education and question it with Steward as to how to combat this issue that they're facing. So while Steward is running this asylum, we have this patient called Renfield. And Renfield is under the direct supervision of Steward, Dr. Steward. And Steward is trying to, while he's looking at Renfield, he's always trying to bounce between superstition and science. And while this whole case is going on with Lucy and the infection and stuff like that, it's a constant battle between folklore and science. And that's something that Steward really struggles with. And when they first tell Steward of Lucy's survival, if you will, or her undead-like experience, he is very much not a believer. And it really takes that experience with them in the woods with the child being killed to understand that this is real, and this is not really a joke. Yeah. All right. Cool. So we can go into Helsing a little bit here. We got any comments? Anybody over here chatting it up? No one? No one chatting it up? All right. Cool. Word. All right. So Van Helsing. Who is Van Helsing? Well, he's Dutch. He's a Dutch doctor, and he's an expert in all the different, the different sciences that go, so sociology, psychology, all that type of stuff. He's also an expert in, like, folklore, if you will, and the science that surrounds folklore. It's kind of weird the way that he describes his education, but he's an educated man. He's one of the best doctors that England has to offer at this particular time. And he's one of Dracula's direct opponents. It's the battle that we end up seeing in this book is between Helsing and Count. It's between the two of them. Count is basically equipped with his 3 wives, and Helsing is equipped with Arthur, Harker, Mina, not really Lucy, but I guess you could say it's Lucy, and Quincy. Quincy's one of my favorite characters in the book, to be honest with you. But Van Helsing's like, and one of Van Helsing's downfalls is that he's quiet, and he's reluctant to share information for whatever reason. I suspect that he feels anyone could become a target at any time. And so because of that, he doesn't want to share his new findings and his information, which would turn out in the book to be a huge error in his point of view at that point. That turns out to be one of his flaws, and it could possibly have put an end and saved Lucy much, much earlier. And I have down for symbolism, he's the bridge of, that old world mystic mindset in the new sciences. And you could say the new sciences are Steward, because they kind of are. Steward is basically like book smart, but I don't think Steward wants to adapt his thinking to mystic or folklore ideas, because who would believe that such a thing is actually going to happen? And Steward was once Helsing's teacher, and while Helsing taught all the psychology and sociology courses or material to Dr. Steward, he now has to teach Dr. Stewart and the group about the spiritual battle that they're going to endure very, very soon. So let's go into... I put a little bit of stuff down, like what he relies on. He relies on faith, garlic, and crucifixes. You know, the old school vampiric stuff. I put that down. That might be pretty useful to you guys. Let's talk a little bit about Arthur, Lord Godalming. Arthur is Lucy's fiance, and Lucy is Arthur's late wife, or late fiance. And he is a key member in the hunting team, I guess, if you will. He's the one who's credited with the kill on Lucy. So after a long heated debate between Stewart, Helsing, Mina, and Arthur himself, and Quincy was there too. After a long debate between those guys, they finally decide, Arthur finally gives permission to go to Lucy's gravesite. And at Lucy's gravesite, they discover she's not really dead. She's still alive, but she's in a different, you know, she's under the direct control of Count, which is shocking to Arthur, because Arthur's in disbelief the entire time. You know, well, maybe someone stole the body. Like when they enter the grave and they see that she's not there. Well, maybe someone stole the body. Okay, well, maybe someone put it back. And like, he's trying to rationalize. I don't blame him, because it's kind of crazy. But he's trying to rationalize his ideas and his theories about what's going on. And pretty soon he discovers that Lucy's not actually dead. She's alive. And he ends up putting a stake through her heart. And Lucy releases ear-piercing screech, which nearly not kills him physically, but kills him emotionally. And he, thank God, ended Lucy's curse and freed her for the rest of existence. Arthur's an important guy. He's a really important dude. Let's talk about Quincy. I got a cool little theory about Quincy, too. Quincy's kind of a cool guy, you know. He's a Texan. He's American. And before I get into who Quincy was, I'm going to get into what my theory is. So there was the vampire pandemic in the late, or basically from 1790 to 1890. There was this big pandemic or panic in the eastern section of the United States. At that point, it was like Vermont all the way down to like Rhode Island. And there was a panic, kind of like the satanic panic in like the 70s and the 80s. With like the metal music and all that stuff. The 1970s and 1980s, the satanic panic. It's similar to how that worked. And where it happened was a lot of Rhode Island, Vermont, Connecticut, Massachusetts, that general area. And I believe that, or actually no, Stoker did know about this, and he did research this particular panic, and because it ended kind of around the 1890s, right as he's about to release the novel 7 years later. And so it would be published, the panic would be published in all sorts of newspapers, and it really wouldn't be all that difficult for Stoker to get a hold of the newspapers, considering he was in the United States a couple of times. He met Mark Twain. He met, I forget who he met. Did I write it down? Am I good? Am I good, chat? Did I write that stuff down? Who he met? I don't think so. It's okay. There's another famous author that he met in the United States that is escaping me at this very moment. And I can't seem to get this paper to separate. There we go. Yeah, I didn't write it down. It's all good. But no. So he brought this information from the United States back to Romania, or back to England. and started to really, focus in on the vampire stuff. So I think that he named Quincy because Quincy Adams, huge city in Massachusetts at that point, one of the bigger cities in Massachusetts. A lot of stuff happening there. President's named after, or it was named after presidents, so it was pretty important. So I'm willing to bet that, obviously we'll never know because Bram Stoker's no longer around, but I'm willing to bet that it was possible that Quincy was named after Quincy, Massachusetts, which would be pretty cool because I used to live in Quincy, not too far from here. So Quincy Morris, who is he? He's a Texan adventurer who goes to England basically to find like a suitor, or honestly, I don't know why he's there, but he is one of the suitors. And what character traits are around Quincy? He is one of the most charming dudes. When he gets denied by Quincy, Lucy to be a spouse, he's like, it's okay, don't worry, I understand, but we're always gonna be friends. We've been through too much to, not be friends, and how could I, not consider you a friend after all we've gone through? And this was way before the vampire stuff. But so he's an outsider, but he's got a good heart, and he's a strong role of what masculinity looks like in the I guess this time of losing some of it to Dracula. Dracula is sort of like taking it from these guys, but Quincy stands strong. And he eventually suffers a fatal blow in the final battle, the short, quick, but deadly battle of Dracula and this vampire crew. And what are some good points about Quincy? Something that I noticed was that he's a good shooter, and that he's calm, and that he's like, I guess you could say stoic, if you want to use that as a term to throw around. But yeah, no, he's a role model, and he steps up to save. He tries to save Lucy, and he risks his life for her. And it's really just describing what men should be like. Yeah, and he dies in the final battle between the group and Dracula. And yeah, he gets stabbed by one of the what are they called? The Senties. I forget. It's blanking on me right now. One of the transport guys. Well, he gets killed by one of the transport guys, but he was the only casualty besides Lucy, and I think all the kids were saved too. So that was good. Let's talk about Renfield. Renfield's an interesting case, for sure. Renfield is Dr. Steward's patient at the asylum. And Renfield is under Dracula's direct influence. He's making sure... Now, okay, he's under Dracula's direct influence, unbeknownst to this crew of heroes that we're hanging out with. We don't know that. We don't know that, Eventually, throughout the story, Renfield invites Dracula, there we go, through the window, and then that's how Renfield gets killed, because he's like, master, and you kind of feel bad for Renfield at the end, because he's killed brutally. So actually, maybe I was wrong. There were not two casualties, because there was Lucy, the escorts for Dracula, and then Quincy, and then Renfield. Yeah, they all passed. But yeah, Renfield slayed by his master, and Renfield, I'm not gonna lie, he never got bit. He's just crazy. He's just a crazy guy. Like he's just out of his mind. That's what he is. And when we're talking about symbolism, he seeks like eternal power and eternal life. And that's where the whole catching, flies to feed to spiders, catching spiders to feed to birds, and catching birds to feed to cats. That's where that comes from, because then he'll eat the spiders, he'll eat the birds, or he'll eat the flies, and he'll eat the cats, because he's trying to take their life from them. He's trying to take their life. Coffee 1, down. Do not do this if you are not a professional coffee drinker like myself. Coffee 1 is gone and away. Gone with the wind. Coffee by Seth. You can shop it right now. We got all sorts of flavors on there. So he's consuming all these bugs. He's consuming the animals to try to create some form of eternal life. And through the consumption of these bugs, we can see, or how he treats the bugs and the animals, we can see what Dracula's doing. We can find out what he's doing through the way Renfield acts. He has like a mind control over him. But Renfield never got attacked. He's just crazy. He's just crazy. He ends up escaping and going to Carfax, which is the home that Jonathan Harker was doing the paperwork for Dracula for, and ended up mailing out the property, stuff like that. And that's actually where the Demeter comes into play. Chapter 8, 7, 9, something like that. In that ballpark. The Demeter was also a book I talked about in the first coffee hour. This will probably be the last coffee hour about this book, but the Demeter was a really good chapter. In my opinion, it's second or close second to the first 5 chapters. The first 5 chapters of this book are awesome. It's a great. Sometimes I'll just put it on just to listen to the first 5 chapters because it's really well written. And then the Demeter, the Russian ship's account of what happened, it's kept in like memoirs from the ship's captain. And it kind of just breaks down the madness that's happening on the ship. But what happened is that someone busted a box, or the box was loaded and it's carrying soil, and Dracula's inside of the soil, resting, traveling because he can't cross water. And he's on the soil, and then the soil spills, or somehow the box gets opened, and now Dracula at night starts killing the crew, one by one, throwing them overboard, feasting on them, throwing them overboard, killing them, slaying them, doing his thing, doing his evil thing. And that's the first part of the book that you could consider is modern horror. It really was the point where you start to see the animalistic-like behavior that Dracula possesses. Unless you want to count him climbing down the walls at the castle. You could call it that. But for me, that was the more terrifying versions of Dracula. Because he's not really in the book. He's talked about in the book. And you can see the psychological effect that he's having on the crew. But he's not really a prominent figure in the book. He does things like fly as a bat outside people's windows, and then Quincy tries to shoot at him and misses and goes through the window and almost kills someone. But stuff like that. And then you get to the Renfield case, which was what we were discussing originally. And slays Renfield. And, taints Lucy. Not Lucy. Mina. Yep. Alrighty. Yeah. And I think that's going to be it for characters. I do have some notes here about the parallels between the American vampire lore and Dracula itself. If you guys are interested, I guess we can kind of go over it for a few. Got some viewers in here. Throw some chats in. I want to talk to you guys because I'm pretty much done with my character analysis. So if you guys want to talk, ask some questions. I can answer some questions. We can talk about the podcast. We can talk about this. We can talk about what my vision is for the show, or the channel itself. Throw some stuff in. My lights keep flickering. Maybe Dracula's around, possibly. But yeah, no. So if you guys want to read a little bit about the American vampire lore, I recommend you guys look up the Mercy Brown in New England newspapers case. That's kind of where Stoker got a lot of the info. And Stoker didn't necessarily make the garlic law about these guys. He didn't. I don't think he made the crucifix part of this. I think he came up with the running water and the animals type of thing. But I think that the what do you call it? The garlic was a real thing before the book. Yeah. What type of rituals were going on in the New England vampire panic? 1790s, 1890s. What was going on? I wrote down what the belief was. Families believed that deceased relatives were draining the life of the living, obviously. And then what were the rituals? Staking, removing hearts, burning the remains, stopping the vampire. So it was Massachusetts, that whole area, the whole East Coast, very well known for its crazy, it's crazy beliefs, because you got the Salem witch trials that happened. Maybe I'll do a coffee hour on the Salem witch trials. I don't know much about it, but I'll totally learn about it. Salem's only like a 25-minute ride at nighttime from here. If you go during the day, all bets are off. Nobody knows. Nobody knows how long it's going to take during the day if you're going to go through Boston traffic. But from here, go at night, no traffic, 25, 30 minutes, throw some music on, not a bad ride. If you're going to go during Halloween, though, I'd recommend staying away from it. Everybody and their grandmother goes there for Halloween. But yeah, so I'm going to probably do something about the Mercy Brown case. That happened in Rhode Island. And they basically took her heart out and burned her heart. That was 1892. So, and the ashes were mixed into tonic for her sick brother to drink. Crazy. Yeah, but that's kind of what I got going on here for today. If I see any message retracted, I'm going to give it a couple of seconds here, but if I don't see any questions popping up in the chat, then I think I might just call it a night. This was something that I quickly wanted to do after dinner. And just kind of just talk. I haven't really been on the channel for coffee hour or cigar nights or anything like that. Kind of like what I was thinking about doing. But yeah, so I might just end it. But I got about half a cup of coffee. So like I said, if you guys got questions, feel free to ask me questions. Any questions about the book itself? Questions about the Count of Monte Cristo, which is what I'm currently reading. I'm thinking about reading The Great Gatsby. I really enjoyed that movie. The Great Gatsby was a really good movie. I liked the difference between poor and rich. I really enjoyed that because obviously it's everyone's goal to become wealthy, and most people start not wealthy. So I want to really read that book again, or not read the book, but actually I can't remember. Did I read the book in high school? Miss McDonough, if you are in this class, or if you are in this video, did I read The Great Gatsby with you? Actually, at that point, I think my teacher may have been out on maternity leave, and I was probably under a long-term sub at that point. Yeah. We read The Glass Castle, though. If you guys read The Glass Castle, I remember a little bit about it, but at that point, all I could really care about in my life was girls, and I did not focus at all on the book itself. In any type of book report, research paper I had to write on the novel, immediate Google. I was looking up Thug Notes, and that stuff was funny. It had a comic era or a comic aura vibe around it about what the book was about, and it would kind of talk to you. Love the book, but have yet to find a movie that does it justice. Yeah, I know, seriously. If you're talking about Dracula, I haven't seen much of the Dracula movies. I did watch The Last Voyage of the Demeter. That's like it's like a B-list movie. It's not like a Hollywood movie, because the what do you call it? not the animations, the CGI. Is that what it is? CGI. Yeah, like the animations of Dracula itself, like the monster wasn't as good as you'd think it would be. You could definitely tell it was a guy in a suit, but the story. Okay, I'll say this about the last voyage of the Demeter. The directors of that movie took an extremely complicated book. Dracula's an extremely complicated book, and it takes a lot of time. I've read that book 2.5 times, and I'm still not really sure 100%. I'm pretty good. I've read that book in, I don't know, a month and a half, 2 months, and I'm still able to recall some info. But those directors I got a lot of respect for. I forget their names. But they took an extremely complicated novel and they broke it down to just one singular chapter. If those directors did that for every single chapter, or put the first 5 chapters, because you could probably put the first 5 chapters of Dracula into one movie. Jonathan Harker's entrance and escape into the castle. That itself is a movie. That itself has so much detail, so much info. If I had $1 million budget, or not $1 million, I had multi-million-dollar budget, and they wanted me to direct a movie on the first 5 chapters of Dracula, I could. That would be so good. So I have a lot of respect to the producers of the last voyage of the Demeter. And it's okay. It's okay. I wouldn't pay a ton of money to watch it. If you can get it for free, that's probably what's worth. But like, knowing what I know now, would I have seen it in the theaters? Yes, I would have. It was pretty good. It came out a few years ago. Maybe it came out last year. I don't remember. But no, it's a good movie though, because they kept true to that one particular chapter. They didn't really, they didn't really differ. And the only thing that was a little weird to me was, and I guess it could have been true. It could have been true because in the book it never specifies. But what could have been true was that the main character, if you haven't seen it, if you've seen it, mute your speakers for 10 seconds. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. If you haven't seen it, mute your speakers right now because I'm going to spoil it. The main character gets off the boat, barely survives the wreckage. Okay, you're good. And I think that because it goes into a scene in England, and I think that point, it wasn't in the book itself, but it could have been. It could have happened because we don't know what happened to all the other guys. Only thing that we know that happened as the reader, for sure, was the captain. The captain died on the steering wheel. That's what happened. He tied his hands to the steering wheel of the ship and said, I'm going to go down with the ship. And he knew about that animal being on the boat. Dracula, by that animal. Actually, maybe he didn't know. Because no one knows for sure. Because it always could have been the last guy. And for what the reader knows, it could have been the captain. But then how would you explain the dog jumping off the ship and then all the stuff that happened in England? The chapter's in there for a reason. It 100% was Dracula. But the captain, if you're looking through the captain's perspective, he didn't know that. He didn't know. So it could have been the last dude, because there were 9 mates, a captain, and a chef or something like that. It was like 11 guys, 9 guys, 10 guys, something like that. It wasn't a big crew. And this wasn't supposed to be a long voyage. This should have only been a few days voyage. But no, they started getting freaked out pretty quickly into that chapter. And that book does a pretty good job. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen The Last Voyage of the Demeter in probably a month and a half. I think I watched it because I watched it before the first coffee hour I did talking about this novel. And I'm trying to remember, like, what didn't I like about it besides the CGI? besides the effects, the special effects. And some of the special effects were cool because you got to see Dracula flying around, which was the only thing. So there was one weird thing about that book that actually, because he can't cross running water, and in the novel, he's not depicted to have wings. So he's flying around the sails, and someone escapes to the lifeboat, and he gets slayed, and so in the book he was never depicted to have wings, but he flies over the water and he lands on the lifeboat and he slays the people trying to escape. That, I remember watching it and kind of going, that's not right. He can't fly over running water because the ocean's running water. It's not sitting still. It ain't a bathtub. It's not sitting still. But yeah, no. So, I mean, that was probably the only thing. The only issue I had with that movie was that he didn't have wings and he's not supposed to travel over water. Why? I don't know. Why is he not supposed to travel over water? I don't particularly know. But I know that he can't sleep in an area unless his soil is there. And that's something that we see in the book itself, too, is because there are sub-characters that we don't really hear from a lot. But, like, we get in the book, and Mina is credited at the end of the book. The book is like a scrapbook, which is really cool. So it's credited to Mina at the end. Jonathan Harker credits her for putting all of the proper journals that need to go in to document this case. Mina puts it all together, and we hear that. So the book that you're reading was a log of true events that Mina put together. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. And you get a little stuff from Harker. Actually, that's a point I didn't mention. What does Harker do to memorialize, or what does the crew do to memorialize, what's his name? Quincy. What do they do to memorialize Quincy? Well, at the end, Harker and Mina have a child, a baby boy, and they name him Quincy as a memorial to Quincy Morris for sacrificing his life for saving Mina. Quincy absolutely sacrificed his life to save Mina. It would not have happened, Mina would have been possibly transformed had Quincy not made the decisions that he made, and had the crew not gotten to the carriers of his coffin in time. Yeah. But we got a couple of people in the chat. I just want to say thank you guys all so much for watching. I appreciate that. I'm trying to make these coffee hours a pretty regular thing. I'm always trying to learn. And I'm thinking about doing something. So I'm not sure if you guys saw. You guys should probably just take a quick peek at the thumbnail if you haven't watched it already. But there is a, a video out there of me from 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, I think. Me doing a watch party with the Black Dahlia. If you haven't seen it, that's your homework this weekend. The Black Dahlia video. It's pretty interesting. My girlfriend, Caroline, her grandmother was second cousins with the Black Dahlia. So there's a interesting family connection with that particular case. So what I was getting to was the Black Dahlia. I went outside and I had scheduled the Black Dahlia to release on a Sunday morning at 11, 10, something like that, early morning. I think it was 9, actually. I think it was 9. It was early. I was tired. But got up and set this whole kind of setup, the exact same setup as to what we're seeing right now. I set it up outside, and if it wasn't 9:30 in the morning, I would have smoked a cigar and talked about it, and I kind of muted myself during the actual video itself. But it was cool because, it was an outside shot. So I'm thinking about doing like a cigar night outside where I talk to the viewers. You guys can feel free to ask me questions. If I don't have an opinion, I'm totally cool to form an opinion. But yeah, just check it out once I end the stream here. Check out what the setup looked like. Let me know what you think about it, because I haven't really had any feedback on the set. I don't have no one. Zero people have given me feedback on what the set is. I had one lady whom her and I had a discussion quickly with in the comments about the podcast set in my living room, and I think it was about the Matt Warner interview where we were talking about ghosts and his experience logging and tracking the paranormal. She had mentioned the mics, and yes, the mics were too close to our faces. At that point, I wasn't really going for like a video podcast. I was kind of just going for like an audio podcast. I didn't really know what direction I wanted to bring the channel in. But now I'm kind of trying to make it so that the mics are as out of the way as they can be. Now, these are pretty large mics, but I hope they sound good. They were not cheap. They were very expensive. I think about $230 a piece. I have two of them, $230 a piece. Yeah. Credit to the TV studio that I work out for loaning me most, if not all, of this equipment. I very much appreciate them. WRPS Rockland TV 88.3 FM. Thank you very much. Lisa, if you're watching, appreciate it. Chris, if you're watching, thank you. Yes, but so I'm thinking about doing like a coffee hour or a cigar night outside because I don't really want to smoke in my dining room. I'm not sure if the girlfriend would appreciate that. But outside, maybe, I'm not sure, have some political discussions. I don't think I want to take the channel in that direction. But I was also considering doing like a extra type of thing. Like the coffee hour is to discuss novels, literature, and stuff like that I'm reading because I'm always trying to educate myself. Any particular topics that I want to talk about on an individual basis, sit down and, this would kind of be like a afternoon type of episode, like a coffee hour. What's coffee hour? Well, to me, coffee hour is like 3, 4. Sometimes I'll have a coffee. I need that extra boost to get me through the day. But cigar night would be like an evening shoot. Time right now, 7. It's 8:30. Wow, it's 8:30. I've been on for over an hour. But yeah, the cigar night would be like an evening shoot where I discuss or rediscuss the particular video that I covered that week. So I definitely want to do one on the Ted Kennedy case, the Chappaquiddick case. There's some funky things going on in there that I didn't really discuss or kind of alluded to but never really got fully into. And then there's also some really weird stuff about the Black Dahlia. So yeah, okay, your homework. If you haven't watched the Black Dahlia, that's one of my favorite videos just because I have a personal connection with a descendant of Elizabeth Short. And I'm so grateful for that. Like, obviously not grateful that it happened, but I'm grateful to have the opportunity to learn from the family itself because no one's documenting that. No one's talking about that. No one's discussing how the family feels. They only discuss Elizabeth Short through their eyes. And I'm trying to take it like a personal thing and really understand who Elizabeth was and keep it so that, there is some positive going about in the world about Elizabeth because she was a sweetheart. And yeah, it's some really good feedback from the family, that whole family. Everyone seemed to really enjoy it. There were just some things that grammatically I said that maybe were a bit odd and strange that may have been, different. But yeah, so this weekend, so you guys already watching this, you guys are lucky. Maybe not lucky because you guys get a little bit of a break. Because this is a live right now, but I'm also recording on my device here. And I'm going to republish this video as a coffee hour. And that's going to be this weekend's video because the girlfriend and I are going away for vacation. We're going to Old Orchard Beach, Maine. So if you want to come to Old Orchard Beach. I don't know what my schedule is going to be. But if you happen to see me at Old Orchard Beach or if you're there, absolutely say hello to me. I have never had someone in public say hi to me, and I have almost 6,000 subs. That would be awesome. I swear to God, if I get someone that ever recognizes me or Rich, I'm posting on Instagram. That'll put the biggest smile on my face for a week. I swear to God. The first time that someone recognizes me would be unbelievable. Now, I've had people through the television station be like, oh my God, hey Seth, you work for WRPS, right? Or, hey, I like your bumper sticker. I listen to the station. I'm like, oh, okay, thank you so much. Yeah, we work really hard about it. Stuff like that. But absolutely. So your weekend homework is to watch the Black Dahlia or any other videos that you haven't watched. There is a Coffee Hour 1. It's not alive, though I am talking to the chat like it is alive. It's not alive. And yeah, so you guys got the week off, but do a little bit of catch-up work. The Matt Warner. I'm thinking about having Matt Warner back on for a second episode. Not too sure yet, but it's a possibility. But let me know, guys. Thank you guys all so much. I appreciate every single one of you watching. The people that were here, tuned in for the live episode. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. And I hope all of you guys have a great rest of your weekend. And, well, enjoy the nice weather. Have a good one, guys. Bye.